On this week's Peace and Prosperity, we sit down with Doug Bandow, a senior fellow at the Cato Institute, to assess the U.S. public's opinion on President Trump's diplomacy with North Korea. We also take a look at what the defense chiefs of key regional players discussed about North Korea at the Shangri-La Dialogue in Singapore. Lastly, we meet with residents of a North Korean settlement in the South's Gangwon-do province and hear their stories on how they fled the North during the war and found new homes in the South Korean village.
Hello and welcome to our program. Almost a year has passed since the historic summit between United States and North Korea sitting leaders in Singapore. The second summit meeting in Hanoi did not produce any breakthrough on denuclearization on the Korean Peninsula. Now, watchers of the Korean Peninsula are discussing whether there will be a third summit meeting between US President Donald Trump and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. We sat down with Doug Bandow, senior fellow at the Cato Institute, to gauge the public opinion on this matter in the United States and other issues.
The first North Korea-U.S. summit held in June 12th in Singapore last year brought sitting leaders of the longtime enemies together for the first time. Roughly a year has passed since the Singapore joint statement, a new milestone in Pyongyang-Washington relations, where the two leaders pledged to work towards complete denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. The two sides sat down for another summit meeting in between, but it fell apart after they failed to bridge a widening gap over sanctions relief and an approach to denuclearization. The Trump administration has been using sanctions and pressure to deter North Korean provocations and at the same time pursuing engagement with the communist regime to advance denuclearization talks. How do Americans view President Trump's handling of North Korea? We met with Doug Bandow, senior fellow at the Washington-based think tank Cato Institute, during his trip to Seoul to hear his perspective on the issue. The U.S. public's interest in Korean affairs spiked in 2017 when North Korea carried out its biggest ever nuclear test, and in the following year, which saw the historic North Korea-U.S. summit.
Well, Americans really follow Korean affairs only very indirectly. In 2017, they became very involved with all the threats that were coming from Kim Jong-un, the missile tests, and the rhetoric of the Trump administration. So their interest in Korean affairs is much lower now because none of that has been happening. So despite the failure of the Hanoi summit and the recent small weapons test, as the President Trump calls them, most Americans, I don't think, are very concerned.
According to a poll conducted in June 2018, when the Singapore summit was held, 55% of Americans approved of Trump's diplomacy with North Korea, up from 42% in March of the same year. However, nuclear talks stalled over differences between Pyongyang and Washington. Skepticism began to grow over Trump's North Korea strategy with the Democratic takeover of the House of Representatives in the midterm elections, which were billed as a referendum on Trump. Being wary of a half-baked deal, North Korea hawks in Washington began to voice their concerns. As the North Korea-U.S. stalemate continued after the Hanoi summit breakdown, the Trump administration has come under heavy criticism from hardliners.
Most Republicans have been very hawkish on the issue. A lot of them are very skeptical of his initiative. Frankly, he has people in his own administration which don't like his policies, such as National Security Advisor John Bolton. Democrats have been critical for partisan reasons, for political reasons. I think that he's very concerned about keeping the talks going. He believes that Chairman Kim is prepared to make concessions. I think he recognizes that he's got to get him back to the negotiating table. That is President Trump's highest priority right now.
North Korea has emerged as a major issue in the 2020 U.S. presidential campaign, after President Trump sided with the country in its recent personal attacks on former U.S. Vice President and Democratic presidential candidate Joe Biden.
What's very important is whether the Trump administration is willing to accept that these negotiations are going to have to go on for quite some time and that it's impossible to get just one big agreement. I think there's a good chance for the negotiations if the Trump administration is willing to go step by step. I think that's the critical issue.
He adds that the upcoming South Korea-US summit in June may play a key role in narrowing the gap between the two Koreas and the US.
I think what's critical here is that President Moon is very likely to try to get President Trump to be a little more flexible. President Moon is very interested in allowing some inter-Korean projects to move forward. That might require some reduction of sanctions. So my guess is that's where the conversation is going to be. How can President Moon help President Trump in moving negotiations forward? How can President Trump help President Moon in terms of moving inter-Korean dialogue forward? Both of them are going to, I think, have to give a little to the other. If they do, I'm hopeful for a positive outcome of their meeting.
Now, a year after the Singapore summit that heralded an era of peace, attention is turning to how summit diplomacy, including the G20 summit and the Moon-Trump meeting, will bring momentum to long-stalled nuclear talks.
For today's discussions, we are joined by Professor Kim Han Guan, Korea National Diplomatic Academy. Welcome to Peace and Prosperity, Professor Kim.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to be here, Dr. Bong.
Good. We have just watched the interview of Dr. Doug Bandow of the Cato Institute about American public's opinions about negotiation between United States and North Korea, as well as other concerns for Trump administration. What do you make of his remarks?
I was interested in 2 points. The first, he said the U.S. citizens are not really interested in the recent the launching of a short-range projectile of the North. We don't know exactly what the real intention of the North at the moment, but probably Pyongyang wanted to get attention from U.S. citizens to get an advantageous position on the bargaining table. According to the Doug Bandow's interview, probably the North Korea's intention seems hard to fulfill at the moment.
Okay, then they just wasted a couple of missiles.
I think so, and it is very dangerous to promote the sanctions from
right?
the outside.
Right.
Yes. And second thing is that I was interested in that is divided opinions within United States. It is possible they'll have different ideas and opinions between the Republican Party and Democratic Party politically. But it is very interesting thing for me that President Trump's opinion and acting Defense Minister Patrick Shanahan has different ideas and opinions to see the recent launching of a short-term projectile. It can be a different political opinions or policy opinions, but at the same time, it can be a division of labor to stay the North at the bargaining table.
Well, nearly a year has gone by since the Singapore summit meeting on June 12th between President Donald Trump of the United States and Chairman Kim Jong-un of North Korea. But nothing has been really done smoothly afterwards, despite very euphoric beginning. How would you forecast that there will be third meeting between them in near future?
It is depend on what is the real step from the North. I think it is very clear that there will be 2 ways to resume the talks between the United States and the North. The first one is Pyongyang would make a huge concession, including serious and substantial step for the denuclearization process in the Korean Peninsula. And secondly, probably the US government would shift their policy toward the North from a big deal to change their simultaneously in parallel steps with the North. For me, probably China factor will be a very important element to forecast the talks, future of the talks between the two countries. if China politically and economically support and send aid to the North, probably the North Korea will continuously asking for concession from the U.S. In that case, I think in the near future, it is very difficult, hard to...
But didn't China also agree on a series of United Nations Security Council resolutions on North
Right,
Korea?
that's right, you're right. So from the China's perspective, they have probably the top leaders are considering two choices. One is if the strategic competition with the U.S. intensified in Northeast Asian region, probably they could review seriously support and send aid, economical aid to Pyongyang. But at the same time, they also really consider that if they want to make a recover relationship with the U.S., probably Beijing leadership want to avoid any unnecessary misunderstandings or frictions with the United States if they support or help the North.
You're talking about trade war, right?
Right. Trade war and many things, South China Sea issues and Taiwan issues.
Okay, let's expand upon the circle of our topics to talk about the Shangri-La Dialogue of the defense ministers, which was held in Singapore from May 31st to June 2nd. Two different interpretations are coming from this year's Shangri-La Dialogue. One interpretation is that South Korea, US, China, and Japan, they saw eye to eye about the importance of diplomatic solutions, not military solutions, but diplomatic solutions to nuclear North Korea. But there's also a different opinion that they are not really eye to eye. They have significant differences in how to deal with nuclear North Korea. What's your take on this?
I think Japan is the most concerned and has been felt a security threat from the North. At the Shangri-La Dialogue, Japanese Defense Minister Takeshi Iwaya said North Korea still remain a threat in global community, and international community should working together to complete denuclearization of the peninsula. But U.S. showed some divided opinions to see the North Korean missile threat. The President Trump said some of his people thought the recent launching of a short-term projectile is violate of a UN Security Council resolution, but President Trump said he did not see in this way. So US shows some differences, but in my opinion, Japan and US probably working together, and they are division of labor to stay in North Korea on the bargaining table. I think China has totally different ideas. They said still emphasize dialogue and negotiation in peaceful way.
Following the Shangri-La Dialogue, South Korean Defense Minister Jung Kyung-do and his counterpart, acting U.S. Secretary of Defense Patrick Shanahan, talked about potential transfer of wartime operational control to South Korea. And they said that they have made a significant progress being made. What do you delineate from this wording? They have made a significant progress.
In 2014, the two countries agreed with that if the condition would be met, the control of the wartime will transfer to Right now, the two defense ministers says the significant progress means that South Korea has been made progress and fulfill step by step on the conditions. So it is possible to the wartime operation control can be transferred from United States to Korea in the near future. But one thing we have to consider is that China is another China effect. Factors that if the strategic competition between China and United States in Northeast Asia will be intensified, probably the transfer issue can be on very debatable issue within South Korean society.
So this issue is not bound to specific timeline or date, but it's based upon the conditions.
Right.
Whether South Korea is ready to get the wartime operational command.
Right.
Okay, good. In the meantime, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un made his first public appearance in 23 days after the recent provocations. It seems like that he is focused on taking care of national economy. His visit, inspection tour was a munition factory. What do you think of his recent moves?
After Hanoi summit, the Kim Jong-un regime has made huge efforts to achieve three things. Number one is get support from China if negotiation with United States would be a lengthy negotiation.
Right.
In that case, Pyongyang definitely need China's support and help. And secondly, Kim Jong-un regime has made effort to achieve self-support and self-reliance policy as Kim Jong-un speech at the first session of 14th Supreme People's Assembly in April. The third one is they want to diversify strategic partnership with Russian government and probably or possibly making a summit with Japan in the near future. But for me, this Kim Jong-un's visit ammunition factory will be another strive to achieve the second goal, that is self-reliance and self-support policy within the North Korean territory. But all these three approaches can be a short-term release for Kim Jong-un regime. But fundamentally, it cannot be a solution of the current hard situation of the North.
Going back to your first point that North Korea has to make substantial concessions to the United States,
Right.
If it expects another summit meeting with Trump administration.
That is the fundamental solution.
Things are not so easy for Kim Jong-un authority in North Korea, I think.
That's true. So Kim Jong-un has to review which level they should make concession and proposal a new suggestions to the Trump administration.
Okay, we have to wait and see.
Right.
Okay. Thank you very much for sharing your insight and analysis today, Professor Kim.
Thank you very much, Dr. Bong.
June is a memorial month in South Korea. June 6th is Memorial Day, and June 25th marks the start of the Korean War. Peace and Prosperity has put together a special series to commemorate this month. This week, in the first episode of the series, we met with those who had to leave their homes in the north and ended up settling down on the other side of the DMZ in Gangwon province.
The city of Sokcho in Gangwon province is home to a number of tourist attractions, including Abai Village, a settlement of North Korean refugees displaced during the Korean War. The residents mostly hail from Hamgyongdo province in the north, and the name Abai comes from the Hamgyong region dialect meaning father. One of the local delicacies here is a Hamgyong-style dish called Abai Sundae, a variety of Korean blood sausage. One of the most popular things to do in Sokcho includes getting on the Ketbe boat, a small passenger ferry which used to be the only means of transport connecting downtown Sokcho and the village. Originally, the refugees intended to head back to their homes in the north after staying in the South Korean city temporarily. But nearly 7 decades have already passed since their arrival. A lot has changed, and the number of first-generation arrivals has dwindled, but one thing that hasn't changed is the longing for their homes on the other side of the border.
거기에다 고향에다 놔두고 나올 시기는 이게 늦어 3개월이면 다시 들어간다 했거든. 그런 것이 지금 어전 한 70여 년, 69년 된 거예요. 예.
Kim Jin-guk thought the war would be soon over, and he would be able to return to his hometown. His memories are fading, but he clearly remembers his home address in the north. For the 80-year-old refugee, the feeling of longing has developed into grief.
지금의 1세들은 다 돌아갔다고. 그분들이 그 한시 이야기를 하는 것이 야, 이 고향 땅도 한번 보지도 못하고 내 생명을 여기서 이제 끝이구나 하는 것을 이런 한탄한 월망 섞인 이런 한탄한 사람들이 많았다고. 그것을 볼 적에 지금도 이제 이 얘기를 하니까 그분들이 얼굴이 오르거린다고.
A special event is being held in the village today to bring comfort to the residents like Kim. Every year, Sokcho hosts the History and Culture Festival for Displaced Koreans to commemorate the history of displacement in Korea, the last remaining divided nation on earth. Now, in its 4th year, the festival is packed with visitors from across the country. There are reenactments of what a post-war Korea might have looked like in the 1950s. Visitors take a moment to appreciate the efforts of those who struggled to find hope in the ruins.
알지 못했던 문화들을 너무 쉽게 잘 설명을 해놓아 주셔가지고 되게 유익한 것 같아요. 유치원에서 아이들이랑 통일 프로젝트 하고 있어가지고 이런 부분 아이들이 알고 가면 좋을 것 같아서 사진도 찍고 정보 아이들한테 주려고 왔어요.
There is a long queue at the booth that allows visitors to sample different North Korean dishes. Among them is nongma noodles, a noodle dish made of potato starch originating from Hamgyongdo province.
꽤 시원하고 쫄깃거리고 맛은 있는데 어렸을 때 기억에 먹던 거하고는 좀 다른 것 같아요. 죽기 전에 한번 가봤으면 좋겠어요.
저는 다 나왔는데 우리 아저씨는 엄마랑 저 할머니가 다 안 나왔거든. 동생들도 다 있고 그래서 가고는 싶어. 한번 가보고 싶어.
To mark the last day of the festival, a group of actors put together a performance portraying the escape journey of North Korean refugees during the war. About 70 years have passed, but the refugees still become emotional over the painful memories of the past.
공연을 하면서 막 울음소리, 폭격소리를 들으니까 나도 모르게 눈물이 나고 가슴이 아파요. 그분들의 그 소원인 통일, 또 잃어버린 가족, 헤어진 가족들을 찾기에는 너무 시간이 촉박하다는 거, 그게 제일 가슴이 아파요.
The North Korean refugees in Abai village say their only remaining wish is to return to their hometowns and reunite with their loved ones.
연호도 어릴 적에 나갔다가 다시 이제 자기 그 태어난 데를 찾아오는데 만물의 연장 인간으로서 왜 고향 땅이 안 그리겠습니까? 남북이 좀 잘 돼가지고 그 왕래 좀 그렇게 해가지고 와서 이 세상 떠나더라도 이제 한이 없겠다는 것을 한시 마음속으로 가지고.
The residents say June brings more memories of their homes in the north than any other months. They yearn for the day when they finally will be able to return to their original hometowns.
Bonsai this week is why false news about North Korea is so frequent, especially news regarding political purges. The biggest reason is that North Korean system as a political system is one of the most opaque and closed systems in the world. So it is extremely difficult to cross-check whether informant is reliable or the information is accurate. Informants inside North Korea usually gather what they hear in Jangmadang, local markets, and feed it to their clients in South Korean media or the government. They usually do not have direct connections with the government offices. And the government officials or high-ranked military officers know very well that leaking secrets will jeopardize their career and personal safety. But just like any other place in the world, people in North Korea and South Korea gravitated toward shocking news and flamboyant rumors. On the supply side, North Korean informants know what kind of rumors will be attractive or have market values to their contacts inside South Korea. On the receiving end, South Korean media tends to succumb to pressure to report what they got from their informants inside North Korea ahead of their rivals. And this is where we'll wrap things up. We'll be back next week. Thanks for watching.